Fallen leaves danced in the chilly November wind through the residential neighborhood in the Boston suburbs. Linda Foster gazed out the kitchen window and sighed deeply. This season, when the trees changed from vibrant autumn colors to brown, was her favorite time of year. As Thanksgiving approached, her desire to cherish family warmth grew stronger. "Mom, what do you think of the centerpiece?" Linda turned around to see her 17-year-old daughter, Caitlin, holding up a handmade decoration. It combined pine cones, red autumn leaves, and small pumpkins beautifully tied together with ribbon. A perfect adornment for their Thanksgiving table. "It's lovely, Kate. You always create something beyond my imagination." Linda smiled and touched her daughter's cheek. Caitlin had her mother's brown curly hair and clear blue eyes, but her keen observation skills and creativity were uniquely her own. In the 5 years since the divorce, Linda and Caitlin had deepened their bond, supporting each other through life's challenges. "This Thanksgiving, I want to make sure Grandma, Grandpa, and Aunt April are happy," Caitlin said as she carefully placed the decoration on the table. "Especially Aunt April. Nothing pleases her unless it's perfect." Linda bit her lip gently. Caitlin's words carried a hint of sarcasm, but they weren't untrue. Her sister April had built a successful career at a prestigious Boston real estate company. Though single with no children, April's career achievements and luxurious lifestyle were constantly praised by their parents, Warren and Martha. "April just sees things in her own way," Linda said kindly. Inwardly, she had to admit she was tired of the complicated relationship with her sister. April seemed to look down on Linda for working as a regular accountant and living with her daughter in an old colonial-style house. Linda's smartphone chimed with a message from her mother. "Linda, can you make this year's turkey a small organic one? Last year's was too big. Also, April says we need some gluten-free side dishes." "Thanks," Linda sighed. This was the third request for menu changes. She took pride in hosting Thanksgiving dinner each year, delighting her family with traditional recipes. But April's suggestions for upgrades kept increasing. "Another change?" Caitlin asked, reading her mother's expression. "Didn't Aunt April claim she became gluten-sensitive last year, too? But then she ate plenty of bread at Grandma and Grandpa's house at Christmas." Linda admired her daughter's sharp observations, but maintained her composure. "People's food preferences change. We just need to prepare a dinner everyone can enjoy." However, deep inside, Linda felt a subtle tension about the family gathering. Her parents always prioritized April, proudly discussing her successes while remaining indifferent to Linda's efforts and achievements. This tendency seemed to have grown stronger after her divorce, as if her failed marriage were evidence of poor judgment. "Mom, are you making that pumpkin cheesecake again this year?" Caitlin's voice interrupted her thoughts. Linda smiled again. "Of course. It's your favorite, isn't it? It's a recipe passed down from my grandmother." Caitlin beamed. She loved her mother's cooking skills and had a special attachment to the family recipes. Linda headed to the kitchen and began preparing the ingredients. Cooking for her wasn't just a chore, but a form of expressing love. She believed that the feelings infused into the flavors could speak more eloquently than words. By dusk, Linda and Caitlin were reviewing their Thanksgiving preparation list. Turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, sweet potato casserole, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie, and the newly added gluten-free stuffing. "Perfect." Linda nodded, looking at the list. "This Thanksgiving is going to be special." Caitlin gazed at her mother and quietly said, "Mom, just the two of us is special enough. The others." She paused momentarily, searching for words. "Whatever they think doesn't matter to us." Linda felt a warmth in her chest at her daughter's wisdom. Young as she was, Caitlin understood the family dynamics. She probably noticed what Linda pretended not to see. "You make me proud, Kate." Linda smiled gently. The two continued their preparations under the kitchen light. On the surface, they were preparing for a peaceful, happy family gathering, but underneath lay unspoken tensions and secrets. 1 week before Thanksgiving, Linda sipped her coffee while gazing at the misty Boston streets. The kitchen counter was already spread with Thanksgiving ingredient lists and an open traditional recipe book, a treasure passed down from her grandmother to her mother and then to her. Her smartphone's ringtone pierced the quiet morning air. It was a message from April. Linda, please don't add any nuts to the stuffing this year. I recently had an allergy test and reacted to walnuts and pecans. Also, can you make the gravy with gluten-free flour? Linda frowned. Her stuffing followed an unchanged recipe from her grandmother's time with walnuts and sage creating its distinctive flavor. Nevertheless, thinking it was for family's sake, she began considering alternatives. As she adjusted her recipes, the phone rang again. This time, it was her father, Warren. Linda, your mother wants you to go easy on the butter this year. Her cholesterol test came back a bit high. Also, the doctor told me to watch my salt intake. We're counting on you for Thanksgiving dinner. Linda took a deep breath and replied, I understand, Dad. Health comes first. After hanging up, she stared at the recipe book, contemplating how to modify the flavorful recipes that had been passed down for generations. A Thanksgiving dinner low in salt, light on butter, without nuts, and gluten-free. It was far from the tradition she cherished, but she reconsidered for the sake of family. Mom, you look troubled, said Caitlin, putting down her backpack as she returned from school. Linda explained the situation to her daughter. Caitlin listened silently, but doubt clouded her blue eyes. Hey, Mom, didn't Aunt April eat walnut brownies at last year's Christmas party? And didn't Grandma and Grandpa both eat buttermilk cake at Grandma's birthday last month? Linda paused thoughtfully. Caitlin's observations were accurate. However, to avoid conflict, she smiled and answered, Maybe everyone's becoming more health conscious. As we age, we need to be more careful about certain things. Caitlin said nothing, but that evening, she opened a new notebook and began writing. She meticulously checked April's social media posts, saved screenshots, and created a folder titled Family History Project. 3 days before Thanksgiving, as Linda was doing a final check of the ingredients, she received a call from her mother, Martha. Linda, I hate to ask, but could you make apple pie instead of pumpkin pie this year? April says pumpkin is hard on her digestion. Linda couldn't hide her surprise. But pumpkin pie is our family tradition. I've been making it every year using Grandma's recipe. I know, dear, but a change might be nice this year. April is bringing special organic apples. Linda silently nodded and ended the call. She gazed at the family photos hanging on the kitchen wall, remembering how pumpkin pie had been featured in every Thanksgiving picture for the past decade. Somehow, this small change brought her an overwhelming sense of loss. That evening, Caitlin quietly observed her mother reviewing recipes. I was sketching drainage patterns for the southeast corner when the doorbell rang. March afternoons in Portland usually meant peace. Retired life, finally offering what 40 years of deadlines never did. Time to think. Time to plant gardens instead of buildings. The bell rang again, insistent. Rufus stood on my porch, grinning like he'd won the lottery. A woman I'd never seen before stood beside him, her hand resting on his arm with practiced ease. Dad, we're engaged. My son's words tumbled out before I could ask them and sighed. I wanted you to meet her right away. The right away struck me first. No phone call, no gradual introduction. Just this sudden presentation like showing off a car he'd bought on impulse. Come in, I managed, stepping aside. This is unexpected. I know. Rufus practically vibrated with nervous energy as they entered. But when you know, right? The woman extended her hand. Celeste Morgan. I've heard so much about you, Mr. Boyd. Rufus says, you designed half the notable buildings in Portland. Her grip was firm, confident, manicure expensive. Notable is generous, I replied. Functional is accurate. Please call me Delbert. She smiled and immediately began cataloging my entryway. Her eyes swept across the original crown molding, paused on the walnut banister, calculated dimensions with what looked like professional assessment. This craftsmanship is extraordinary. You don't see this quality anymore. Built in 1923, I said, watching her absorb the information like someone appraising inventory. We moved to the living room. I offered coffee, which they accepted. As I prepared it in the kitchen, I could hear Celeste asking Rufus about square footage, property lines, neighborhood development patterns. Her voice carried that smooth professionalism I recognized from years of contractor meetings, People who measured value before appreciating beauty. So, I said, returning with the tray, tell me how you two met. Rufus launched into the story with too much enthusiasm. Networking event, industry connection. She was consulting for a luxury real estate firm. He was presenting on sustainable development. Very cinematic. Celeste supplemented with precise details. I work with high net worth clients primarily. Property portfolios, investment strategies, estate transitions. She said high net worth 3 times in 5 minutes. When I met Rufus, his passion for ethical development impressed me. So many people in our industry just chase profit. What about your family? I asked. Where are they? She deflected smoothly. Seattle originally, but we weren't close. I prefer looking forward rather than back. Rufus has told me wonderful stories about you, though. Retired architect, widower, built this beautiful home. He clearly got his talent from you. The compliment felt rehearsed. I sipped my coffee and said nothing. Actually, Rufus said, pulling papers from his messenger bag. Celeste suggested something I think shows real maturity. A prenuptial agreement for transparency and mutual protection. He handed me the document, like it was proof of her virtue. I put on my reading glasses slowly, buying time to process this development. The contract was thick, 20 pages of legal language. This is thorough, I said. My attorney drafted it, Celeste explained. I believe in protecting both parties. Marriage is a partnership, but smart partnerships have clear terms. Don't you agree, Delbert? I flipped through the pages. Clause 7. All family assets acquired during marriage subject to equal division. Family assets, not marital assets. Family. Clause 12. Inheritance received during marriage becomes marital property after 1 year. Has Rufus had independent legal review? I asked. Dad, it's fair. Celeste wouldn't. I interrupted gently. Just standard practice, son. Any major contract deserves 2 perspectives. Rufus looked wounded. Celeste touched his arm, redirecting his attention with subtle pressure. Would you like to see the rest of the house? She asked me. I'm fascinated by this period's architecture. We toured the rooms. She photographed crown moldings, supposedly for inspiration, but her angles captured more than decorative details. In the master bedroom, she paused by the window overlooking the garden. Such a large house for one person, she observed. Have you considered what happens to it eventually? The question landed with calculated weight. Eventually is a long way off, I replied. Of course, she smiled. I only meant estate planning is crucial. Rufus mentioned you haven't updated your will recently. Did he? My tone cooled. That's a private matter between father and son. She backtracked with professional grace. Families should discuss these things openly. Prevents misunderstandings later. I prefer preventing misunderstandings now. Back downstairs, Rufus checked his watch. We should go. Reservation at 6. At the door, Celeste hugged me with calculated warmth. I'll take good care of him, she whispered against my shoulder. And I'm so glad we'll be family. The emphasis on family sounded possessive. After they drove away, I stood in the doorway, holding the prenup. Small details accumulated in my mind like structural defects during inspection. The diamond bracelet she wore, 3 carats minimum, worth more than 6 months of consultant salary. Designer handbag, knowledge of inheritance law exceeding casual interest, questions about my will before questions about my favorite foods or hobbies. I walked to my study, spread the contract across my desk, and began making notes. Circled clause 12, underlined clause 7. In the margin, I wrote one word, why. The weeks after their visit crawled by with suffocating normality. Rufus called regularly, each conversation steering toward wedding plans, venues, guest lists, color schemes. I responded with appropriate enthusiasm, asked appropriate questions, played the role of supportive father. The prenuptial contract sat in my study drawer. Twice Rufus asked if I'd reviewed it thoroughly. Twice I deflected, still reading through the details. Truth was, I'd read it 17 times. Each reading revealed new concerns buried in legal language. But concerns weren't evidence. They were only instincts, And instincts don't convince sons blinded by infatuation. Mid-April arrived with unusual warmth. My former colleague, Robert Chin, called about meeting for lunch downtown. He wanted advice on retirement planning, transitioning from active practice to consulting work. I agreed. The restaurant he chose, Cascade Room, occupied a renovated warehouse in the Pearl District. I arrived 15 minutes early, my habit from decades of client meetings. The hostess seated me at a table near the window. Good natural light. I reviewed the menu, wondering if Robert would be late as usual, when movement across the restaurant caught my attention. I looked up and went completely still. Celeste sat at a corner table, partially obscured by a decorative column. A man in an expensive suit sat across from her, early 40s, dark hair, confident posture. Their body language screamed intimacy. She leaned close, her hand covering his on the table. His thumb stroked her wrist with familiar ease. My first instinct was to stand, march over, demand an explanation. My hand was halfway to pushing back my chair when 40 years of architectural discipline overrode emotion. I pulled out my phone, pretended to check messages, and activated the camera. Through the foliage, I photographed them. For 20 minutes, I watched with the attention to detail I'd once applied to blueprint reviews, cataloged every gesture, her fingers tracing his forearm, his hand briefly touching her cheek, the way they shared a dessert with a single fork, laughing at some private joke. When the waiter brought their check, the man paid without hesitation. Expensive bottle of wine, multiple courses visible on the bill, even from my distance. They were comfortable together, practiced. This wasn't a first date or a second meeting. This was an established relationship. When they prepared to leave, she kissed his cheek and lingered there, her lips near his ear. He whispered something that made her laugh. Not the polite laugh she'd used in my living room, but something genuine and unguarded. They exited separately, professional caution, suggesting they understood the need to hide. I waited 5 full minutes, paid my own bill quickly with cash, and followed to the parking area. The man climbed into a black Mercedes sedan. I photographed it, capturing the license plate clearly. Robert Chun arrived 20 minutes late. I barely registered our lunch conversation. My mind churned through implications, possibilities, strategies. After we finished, I drove directly to the office of Philip Torres, a journalist I'd known for 20 years. "Philip, I need a favor," I said. "A discreet one. Information only. License plate to name." He took the plate number I'd written down. 30 minutes and 2 phone calls later, he had the information. Daniel Kraus, real estate agent at Premier Properties Northwest. Specializes in luxury estates. Over $2 million. I searched for Daniel online while still in Philip's office. Found his professional profile with photograph. Same man from the restaurant. Match confirmed. I researched Portland private investigators that evening, selecting Marcus Webb based on his specialty, financial fraud and infidelity cases. His office occupied a modest suite downtown. Webb himself was unremarkable. I explained the situation concisely. My son's fiancée, suspicious prenuptial agreement, intimate lunch with another man. I need her background investigated, particularly romantic history and financial patterns. Webb quoted his rates without emotion, $150 per hour, plus expenses. "Whatever it takes," I said. "I want a comprehensive report." "If I find what you're afraid I'll find, what will you do?" he asked. "Protect my son." Those 2 weeks stretched like 2 months. I maintained a normal facade with Rufus. Wedding planning discussions continued. Celeste joined twice, performing her role perfectly. She was good, really good. But I had seen the truth, and now I was waiting for proof. Webb called on May 2nd. "Report's ready. You'll want privacy when you read it." We met at his office. The folder he handed over was thick, at least 60 pages. "Took some digging," Webb said, "but the pattern's clear. She's done this before twice." I opened the folder and began reading. Marriage certificate from 2019. Celeste Morgan to James Whitfield, Portland businessman. Divorce filing from 2021. Settlement $180,000 plus vehicle. Marriage certificate from 2022. Celeste Morgan to Richard Brennan, Seattle entrepreneur. Divorce filing from 23. Settlement $225,000 plus property transfer. Photographic surveillance from the past 2 weeks showed Celeste meeting Daniel Kraus 6 times. Hotel receipts. Restaurant bills. They'd been involved at least 8 months, longer than she'd been dating Rufus. Webb's handwritten note on the final page. She's getting better at this. I closed the folder. My son wasn't in love. He was a mark, a target, a transaction she'd been planning since before they'd met. Recommendation. Webb asked, "Show him this today." "Not yet," I said slowly. "If I approach this wrong, she'll convince him I'm paranoid. I need better timing. Complete strategy." At home, I spread Webb's report across the dining table. Marriage certificates, divorce decrees, financial settlements, photographic surveillance. Each document another nail in Celeste's coffin. But hammering those nails required precision. Approach Rufus too early? She'd convince him I was jealous, controlling. Wait too long. Legal protections would activate. Timing was everything. I needed expert guidance, not an investigator's facts, but a lawyer's strategy. The next morning, I researched Portland family law attorneys online, selecting Patricia Reynolds after reading her 23 years, specializing in prenuptial disputes and fraud cases. Her office occupied a renovated Victorian in Nob Hill. I called at 9 sharp, explained briefly that I needed consultation regarding a fraudulent prenuptial agreement. She had an opening at 11 o'clock. Reynolds herself was a sharp-featured woman in her 50s, with a direct manner. I presented the situation concisely, showed her Webb's report. Oregon's Uniform Premarital Agreement Act allows voiding contracts obtained through fraud, duress, or failure to disclose, she said. Your challenge is proving fraudulent intent existed before contract signing. She explained the burden of proof, pattern of behavior, financial motivation, concealment of material facts. The previous marriages help establish pattern. Her relationship with this Daniel person demonstrates ongoing deception, but you'll need testimony from prior husbands, victims willing to state she employed identical tactics. Reynolds quoted her retainer fee, $5,000 for comprehensive case preparation. I wrote the check immediately. Document everything from this point forward, she advised. Record conversations if Oregon's one-party consent law allows. It does if you're a participant. Get your son's permission to record family discussions about wedding planning. Don't tell him why yet. I left with a legal roadmap. That afternoon, I returned to Webb's office. I need you to find her previous husbands, both of them. I need to know if they'll talk, if they'll testify, if necessary. Webb pulled out notes. Kevin Morgan, first husband, lives in Seattle. Tech consultant divorced her 3 years ago. Second husband, James Pritchard, moved to San Francisco after their divorce 2 years back. He's harder to locate. I authorized additional investigation expenses without hesitation. These men are key to establishing pattern. My attorney says their testimony could void the prenuptial contract entirely. Some divorce victims don't want to relive trauma. They might refuse involvement. Then I'll convince them, I said. They deserve to know she's doing it again. That evening, Rufus called about weekend brunch with Celeste. I seized the opportunity. Son, I've been thinking. This is a significant time in your life. Would you mind if I recorded some of our conversations? Family History Project. Capturing stories, advice, memories, something you and Celeste can look back on years from now. Rufus, touched by the sentimental notion, agreed enthusiastically. That's really thoughtful, Dad. Celeste will love that. I purchased a professional, discreet recording device the next day. I created an encrypted folder on my computer labeled Family Archive 2025. I began a meticulous documentation system. Date, time, participants, key statements, potential legal relevance. Saturday arrived. I activated the recording device in my shirt pocket before Rufus and Celeste arrived for brunch. Over coffee, the conversation flowed naturally toward estate planning. Celeste initiated smoothly. Delbert, Rufus mentioned you haven't updated your will since his mother passed. That's 8 years. Have you considered reviewing it? I played my role perfectly, slightly confused. I suppose I should. Never been good with legal paperwork. You understand these matters. She leaned forward, eager. I'd be happy to recommend someone. Or we could discuss his family. Understanding everyone's situation helps with long-term planning. Family planning, I repeated carefully. You mean after you and Rufus marry? Exactly. Combined household finances, shared resources, coordinated investments. Modern families operate as economic units. Rufus chimed in, oblivious. Makes sense, Dad. Celeste has a business degree. She's better at financial strategy than either of us. So, you're suggesting what exactly? Celeste's smile sharpened microscopically. Just transparency. Understanding what assets exist, how they're structured, what succession plans are, prevents family conflicts later. I'll think about it, I said mildly. After they left, I immediately uploaded the recording. Her language revealed everything. Combined household, shared resources, succession plans. She wasn't planning marriage. She was planning acquisition. Over the following 2 weeks, Celeste increased contact frequency. Conversations always drifted toward my property. This house is so large. Have you considered downsizing? Rufus and I could buy it from you at a fair price. You could move somewhere more manageable. Another time. Life insurance policies. Do you have adequate coverage? Rufus should be beneficiary, obviously. But have you structured it properly? Each probe grew more blatant. I recorded everything, maintaining my naive persona. I transformed the spare bedroom into a command center. I purchased a large corkboard, colored pens, index cards, and string. At its center, Celeste's photograph. The board mapped her relationship with Rufus, her previous marriages, financial motivations, and legal strategy. This visual architecture helped me see the entire pattern simultaneously. One evening, reviewing the latest recording, she actually said, "You're 62. Like she was calculating years until inheritance. She was planning an acquisition schedule. Not while I was breathing. Webb called 3 weeks later. Found Kevin Morgan. Lives in Seattle. Works as a tech consultant. Divorced Celeste 3 years ago. I mentioned the investigation regarding her current engagement. Webb paused. When I said grown son, Morgan said, "Tell the father I'll talk to him." Not to an investigator, to the father directly. So I was driving to Seattle on a Thursday morning in June. Interstate 5 stretched north. Beside me on the passenger seat, the folder containing Webb's report. The cafe Kevin chose was in Capitol Hill, a quiet neighborhood spot with good coffee and corner booths. I arrived 30 minutes early, positioned myself to observe. Kevin Morgan entered at the appointed time, average height, professionally dressed in business casual, carrying visible caution. I recognized him from the photograph Webb had provided. I stood, extended my hand. "Mr. Morgan, I'm Delbert Boyd. Thank you for agreeing to meet." He assessed me carefully. "Your investigator said she's engaged to your son." "How old?" 37. Kevin winced visibly. "Perfect age, old enough to have assets, young enough to rebuild a career. I was 39 when I met her." I ordered coffee for both of us. "How are you now?" 3 years later. "Better. Rebuilt my consulting practice, though I lost a key client in the divorce settlement. She positioned herself on paper as a business partner despite never working a day in her life. Financial recovery took 2 years. Emotional recovery is ongoing. I'm trying to prevent my son from experiencing what you experienced," I responded. "Not just for legal ammunition, though I need that, but to understand what I'm actually fighting." "You're fighting a professional. She's not a casual con artist. She studied this, perfected it, made it a career." Over the next hour, Kevin described the entire relationship arc. The courtship was intense. She matched his interests perfectly. After 4 months, she suggested engagement, saying, "When you know, you know." The prenuptial contract came with an explanation that she'd been hurt before. The contract looked balanced. Equal division of assets acquired during marriage. I didn't understand the clause language. Family assets acquired during marriage actually meant anything either of us inherited or received from relatives became marital property. His father died 8 months into the marriage, leaving him $150,000 and a vintage car collection. According to the prenup, that became a marital asset. The marriage lasted 18 months. She changed after the wedding. Distant, critical, increasingly demanding. Started an affair with a real estate investor. When I confronted her, she filed for divorce immediately. Settlement cost him $180,000, the car collection, and a 30% stake in his business. She knew the timing, waited until the inheritance cleared, then pulled the trigger. The whole thing was planned from the beginning. I shared my own folder, Webb's investigation, recorded conversations with Celeste, timeline of manipulation. Kevin reviewed the materials, with growing recognition. Same pattern. Exactly. Look at this line. Family resource consolidation. She used those exact words with me. It's scripted. He examined a photograph of Celeste with Daniel Kraus. Different man, same dynamic. She always has a backup plan. I asked directly, would you be willing to provide a written statement, testify if necessary, to void her prenuptial contract with my son? Kevin didn't hesitate. Yes. Guilt's been eating at me. If I'd warned him. You're warning me now. That's what matters. We drafted the statement together. Detailed timeline, specific manipulation tactics, financial outcome, pattern recognition. Kevin signed it. As our meeting concluded, Kevin offered final insight. Your son won't believe you at first. I wouldn't have believed anyone trying to warn me. She's that good at creating alternative reality. She'll have explanation for everything. The other man is a business associate. Previous marriages ended amicably. Your suspicions are overprotective paranoia. I acknowledge this fear. It's already happening. He's been distant, canceling our weekly dinners, making excuses. She's orchestrating it. Kevin nodded grimly. Textbook strategy. Separate target from support system, especially skeptics. Timing is crucial. You need overwhelming evidence presented at a moment he can't dismiss it. Not gradual revelation. Single devastating confrontation with irrefutable proof. I drove back to Portland with Kevin's signed statement. The abstract became concrete. But as I crossed back into Oregon, my phone buzzed with a text from Rufus. Dad, sorry to cancel Sunday dinner again. Wedding planning is crazy busy. Rain check. It was the third cancellation in 4 weeks. I recognized the strategy Kevin had warned about. Isolation by increments. The wedding was 10 weeks away. Celeste was accelerating her timeline, consolidating control over Rufus. The Sunday after the Seattle trip, Rufus canceled. The following Sunday, he canceled. The third Sunday. Sorry, Dad. Wedding planning is overwhelming. We'll catch up soon. 3 consecutive cancellations. Our tradition was abandoned. Celeste was executing exactly what Kevin had warned about. By mid-July, I understood. She'd sensed something. Either my performance had slipped, or her instincts detected danger. She was moving to neutralize me. Wednesday evening, I was preparing dinner when the phone rang. Rufus' voice carried unfamiliar tension. Dad, we need to talk. Celeste thinks. I've been thinking about our relationship. Warning bells immediately. I kept my voice neutral. What about it? You've been distant lately. My mind raced. How did she know about the recordings? Son, those recordings are for preserving family memories, like I explained. That's what you said, but why do you need to record everything? It feels like surveillance, like you're looking for problems that don't exist. The phrasing, looking for problems that don't exist, was definitely Celeste's language. Rufus continued. Celeste thinks maybe you're having trouble letting me go. She says parents sometimes sabotage their kids' relationships because they fear abandonment. Textbook manipulation. Reframe protective concern as selfish control. I support your happiness, Rufus. Always have. Then why does Celeste feel unwelcome? Why do you interrogate her about finances and estate planning? I don't interrogate. I engage in conversations she initiates. She says you twist things. Make innocent questions seem suspicious. The call ended with Rufus saying, maybe we should take a break from dinners until after the wedding. Give everyone space to breathe. I agreed, recognizing this as Celeste's victory. Complete isolation achieved. The following morning, I met Reynolds at her office, explaining the deteriorating relationship. This is expected. She's protecting her investment. Your son is an asset she's cultivated. She won't let you interfere without a fight. Can I approach him now? Show him the evidence. Reynolds shook her head firmly. Partial revelation is dangerous. Every piece of evidence you reveal prematurely becomes inoculation. She builds antibodies against the truth. So I do nothing while she turns him against me? You continue building the case. We need overwhelming proof presented at a moment she cannot spin it. Wedding day itself might be ideal. Public setting, emotional stakes high. Her guard lowered by perceived victory. You're suggesting I let the wedding proceed to the brink of disaster? I'm suggesting you strike when the target is most vulnerable. Celeste expects opposition before the wedding. She won't expect opposition at the wedding. Element of surprise is your advantage. That afternoon, Webb called. She met Daniel again. Downtown Marriott, room 847. Spent 3 hours there yesterday. He emailed the encrypted audio file. I played the recording. The device captured their conversation through poor insulation. Celeste, 10 more weeks of this charade. August 16th. After that, timeline accelerates. And the father, he's a problem. Daniel, handled. I have isolated the son effectively. Old man can suspect whatever he wants. Rufus won't believe him now. Celeste, this one's easier. He actually believes I love him. Cruel laughter from both. I stopped the playback. This wasn't romance gone wrong. It was premeditated fraud. The following Sunday, I violated my own strategic patience. I drove to Rufus' apartment unannounced. He answered the door, not inviting me inside. Son, have you had an independent attorney review the prenuptial contract? Why would I need that? Celeste's attorney drafted it fairly. Standard practice to have separate legal counsel. Dad, stop. This is exactly what Celeste warned about. You're trying to undermine our relationship. I saw Celeste's purse on the entry table. She was inside listening. If you can't support this marriage, maybe you shouldn't attend the wedding. Think about that. He closed the door. Driving home, I understood. Reynolds was right. Partial approach failed. I needed overwhelming confrontation, not gentle persuasion. Back home, I updated the case board. The evidence covered an entire wall: financial documents, surveillance photos, Kevin Morgan's testimony, recorded conversations, timeline analysis. I made my decision. Let Celeste think she'd won. Play the defeated father accepting loss. Lower her guard completely. Then at the wedding, when she was most vulnerable, most confident, most exposed, strike decisively. No warning, no mercy, complete revelation. Late July became early August. Weeks of silence from Rufus. No calls, no texts, complete radio silence. I maintained a strategic withdrawal, resisting every urge to reach out. Let Celeste believe she'd won. Let her guard drop. Meanwhile, the work continued. Webb submitted final surveillance reports. Celeste and Daniel met 4 times in 10 days as the wedding approached. They were planning the post-wedding phase, confident in their scheme. Patricia Reynolds organized the evidence into a legal presentation. This would convince any judge, she said. But your audience is your son, not a court. Arrange materials for emotional impact, not just legal strength. 2 weeks before the wedding, I was ready. Then the phone rang. It was Wednesday evening, August 6th. Dad. Rufus's voice was uncertain, almost sheepish. Hi, son. The wedding is Saturday. I know we've had distance lately, but you're still my father. I want you there. Does Celeste want me there? He trailed off. She thinks maybe it's not a good idea, but it's my wedding too. I'm inviting you. I appreciate that. Of course, I'll attend. Really? I'll support your happiness, Rufus. Always have. I continued. I'll stay as long as appropriate, but I need to tell you something important at the wedding. Will you give me a few minutes of your time before or after the ceremony? Your choice. Important like what? His defensive tone returned. Information you need to have about your future, your marriage. What you do with it is your choice. Just promise you'll listen. Reluctantly. Fine. After the ceremony, brief conversation. I sat motionless, processing. Rufus, reaching out despite Celeste's objection, suggested the manipulation wasn't absolute. Some part of him still valued our relationship. I transformed months of accumulated materials into a strategic presentation. I created 3 identical evidence packets, one for Rufus, one for Reynolds as legal backup, one for my reference. Each packet was organized chronologically. Background: Kevin Morgan's written testimony. Financial records of previous divorces. Pattern analysis. Current deception. Web surveillance photographs of Celeste with Daniel. Hotel records. Timeline showing meetings. Manipulation evidence. Transcripts of recorded conversations highlighting financial probing and isolation tactics. The smoking gun. Transcript of the hotel hallway recording where Celeste and Daniel discussed the scheme. Legal analysis. Reynolds' assessment of the prenuptial contract. I sealed the packets in professional folders, labeled them simply The Truth About Celeste Morgan, and created a digital backup on an encrypted USB drive. August 8th, I met Reynolds. Wedding day revelation is high-risk strategy. You need to present everything at once. Give him no time to process through her filter. What's your extraction plan? She asked. Extraction. After revelation, Rufus will need space away from Celeste to process. You need somewhere he can go. My house. I'll insist he come home with me to discuss. Reynolds nodded. Have a bag packed for him. Show him you're prepared to support him through the aftermath. August 10th, Webb delivered his concluding investigation materials. She's stressed. He's reassuring. Timeline's approaching, and she's feeling pressure. Webb also provided financial intelligence. Daniel was significantly invested in the relationship. He's complicit. August 15th, I prepared methodically. I wrote a letter to Rufus, sealed it, and placed it in my safe deposit box as a backup plan. I then systematically dismantled the command center. Board, filing the materials. The physical evidence was removed, but the psychological preparation was complete. That night, sleep was elusive. I lay in darkness, prepared for all scenarios, but hoping for swift recognition. As dawn approached, I finally slept briefly, dreaming of construction sites and buildings collapsing, of foundations that held and those that failed. Woke at 6. Wedding day had arrived. I dressed methodically in my formal charcoal suit. The evidence folder slipped into my jacket's inner pocket, its weight barely noticeable. The digital recorder was tested one final time. I arrived at Brookside Country Club 90 minutes before the ceremony. I wanted to understand the venue layout, identifying private spaces for the post-ceremony conversation. Inside, I positioned myself strategically, back row, aisle seat, clear sight line. Guests arrived, filling Celeste's side quickly with strangers, while Rufus's side remained sparse, evidence of the isolation she'd engineered. The ceremony began. Celeste appeared, beautiful and confident in an elaborate white gown. As she walked toward Rufus, I activated the recording device. Vows were exchanged. I promised to love, honor, cherish. Each word from Celeste's mouth felt like a documented lie. The reception began in the adjacent ballroom. I maintained a peripheral position, observing. Celeste remained attached to Rufus's arm, steering conversations, intercepting anyone who approached him independently. Classic control behavior. I identified the optimal private space, a small library off the main hallway. Door closes. Suitable for document review. Dinner concluded. As the DJ announced the toasts, Celeste excused herself from the head table and detoured to mine. She leaned down close, voice low. Delbert, I want to thank you. You raised a wonderful son. Your job is complete now. This is my family now. Rufus and I discussed it. We need space to build our marriage without interference, meaning you should probably leave soon. You've been here for the ceremony. That's sufficient. Her mask slipped. Contempt broke through. Go home. Don't come back. I spoke quietly. All right, Celeste. But I'm taking someone with me when I leave. Taking someone? What does that mean? Her confidence wavered microscopically. Enjoy your reception, Celeste. What's left of it? I stood and walked toward the DJ booth. I accepted the microphone, stepped to where the entire reception could see me. Thank you all for attending this celebration. I'm Delbert Boyd, Rufus' father. Guests relax slightly. Traditionally, this is the moment for a toast. I'm not giving that toast. What I have to say is more important than tradition. I look directly at my son. Rufus, I need to speak with you privately. Immediately. This cannot wait. The room's energy shifted. Rufus half stood. Dad, what are you? Rufus, I need to speak with you privately right now. This is extraordinarily important. Celeste's face was drained of color. This can wait. Let's continue the reception. Address family matters later. No. I interrupted firmly. This cannot wait. Rufus, give me 10 minutes. Private conversation. What I show you will change everything. Silence blanketed the reception. Rufus, torn, shook his head at Celeste and stepped away from the head table. I pointed down the hall. Just Rufus. Library down that hall. Just us. Celeste protested. He's my husband now. I have a right. You have no rights to this conversation. Rufus, please. We walked toward the library. Behind us, Celeste's voice, raw with panic, faded. The library door clicked shut. Rufus stood near the bookshelf, arms crossed defensively, jaw set. Husband for less than 3 hours. All right, he said tersely. 10 minutes. You've destroyed my wedding reception for this. Show me whatever evidence justifies that. I removed the folder from my jacket, placed it on the mahogany table. It was 2 inches thick, months of investigation compressed. Now, before I open this, understand something. Everything inside was legally obtained. Nothing fabricated, nothing misinterpreted. Independent verification is available for every claim. Why are you talking like a lawyer? Just show me. I opened the folder to the first section. This is testimony from Kevin Morgan. Rufus frowned. Who? Celeste's first husband. His expression flickered with surprise. She told me she'd never been married. I slid the document across the table. Read it. He picked up the pages reluctantly, scanning Kevin's detailed statement. Courtship timeline. Engagement after 4 months. Prenuptial contract. Financial manipulation. Divorce settlement costing him $180,000 plus a business stake. Rufus read slowly, color beginning to drain. This could be fake. Anyone could write. Kevin signed it. Notarized statement. He's willing to testify under oath. Here's his contact information. Call him right now if you doubt. I pushed my phone across the table. There's a second husband. I continued quietly. James Pritchard. Similar pattern, similar outcome. She's done this before, Rufus. Twice. No. The word came out weak. She would have told me. Why would she tell you? That information destroys the illusion she's carefully built. I opened the second section. Photographs spilled across the table. Celeste and Daniel Kraus at restaurants, entering hotels. Timestamps spanning March through August. Who is that? Rufus asked, voice hollow. Daniel Kraus, real estate agent. They've been involved for at least 8 months, longer than she's known you. I laid out images chronologically, including a recent one. This one was 3 days before your wedding. Rufus picked up a photograph, showing them kissing outside a hotel entrance. His hand trembled. You hired a private investigator to follow my fiancée. I hired an investigator after accidentally seeing them together. Would you have believed me without proof? This doesn't mean. Maybe it ended before we got serious. It didn't end. Look at the dates. I opened the third section. Financial documents. Look at the divorce settlements. Pattern of timing. Your prenup. It's designed to maximize her financial access after 1 year. Stop. Rufus's voice broke. This is... He couldn't finish. I pressed forward. During wedding planning, I recorded family conversations. You gave permission, remember? I recorded because I suspected manipulation. I opened my laptop, queued audio files. Listen. Celeste's voice filled the library, warm and concerned, probing about property value and succession planning. Rufus listened with growing horror. One more piece, I said. Most important. I cued the final audio file, the hotel hallway recording. Celeste's voice emerged, talking to Daniel. 8 more weeks of this charade. Her laugh, cruel and calculated. Rufus is more malleable. After the wedding, the prenup activates. Give it 18 months. This one's easier. He actually believes I love him. I stopped the playback. Silence crushed the library. That's her voice. Rufus said, not a question. She called our marriage a charade. She said I'm malleable, that I believe she loves me. His voice cracked on the final words. I'm sorry, son. The prenuptial contract, I said gently. It's a legal trap disguised as mutual protection. Rufus turned from the window. She planned this from the beginning. Researched me. Targeted me. Married me all for money. Yes. What do I do? His voice was empty. First decision is simpler. Do you continue this reception celebrating a marriage that's built on lies? Or do you end it now? I end it, he said quietly. Then louder. I end it now. He walked to the door, yanked it open, and strode down the hallway toward the reception. I followed, carrying the folder. We entered the reception hall together. The music stopped. The wedding is canceled, Rufus announced, voice carrying to every corner. Gasps rippled through the guests. Celeste's face went white. Everyone can leave. Reception is over. I apologize for the disruption, but this marriage was a mistake. Please go. Celeste found her voice. Rufus, what did he tell you? What lies? The truth, Rufus said without turning. About Daniel. About your previous marriages. About your plans for our marriage. He's lying. He's manipulating you. Showed you fabricated evidence. Rufus stopped, turned. I heard your voice on recording, discussing timeline, calling me malleable, laughing about how I actually believe you love me. She had no answer. Celeste turned on me, screaming. You destroyed my wedding. I'll sue you for harassment, defamation, invasion of privacy. Everything was obtained legally, I said calmly. One-party consent recording laws, standard surveillance, voluntary testimony. Your attorney will confirm it's admissible. You'll get nothing, Rufus said. The prenup is void due to fraud. My attorney's already prepared annulment papers. He walked toward the exit. I followed. Behind us, chaos erupted. We drove away from Brookside Country Club in silence. Rufus sat in the passenger seat, still wearing his wedding suit. At my house, he went directly to the guest room and stayed there for 3 hours. When he emerged, his face was blotchy from crying, but his voice was steady. Tell me what happens next legally. That night, we called Patricia Reynolds. She arrived, spread the evidence across my dining table, and explained the legal strategy. Rufus listened like a man receiving a terminal diagnosis. 5 days later, Celeste's attorney served papers. She was suing for breach of contract and emotional damages, $1 million. Reynolds smiled when she read it. Perfect. She's engaging on legal ground where we're strongest. We met in Reynolds' office a week after the wedding confrontation. She's claiming you breached the prenuptial contract by refusing to honor the marriage, seeking enforcement of contract terms plus emotional distress damages. Classic aggressive legal posturing. Rufus looked exhausted. Can she win? No. The contract was procured through fraud. Your father documented that extensively. But we'll need to prove fraudulent intent in court. That means presenting all evidence publicly. This will be painful. Your private humiliation becomes public record. Celeste's attorneys will argue you were a willing participant who changed his mind after the wedding. They'll paint you as vindictive. Let them, I said, because we have her voice on recording, calling the marriage a charade, discussing an 18-month timeline, laughing about his belief in her love. We have 2 previous victims with identical patterns. The hearing is scheduled 2 weeks out. I'll file a counter motion to void the contract based on fraud. The week before the hearing, Reynolds conducted practice testimony with Rufus, playing opposing counsel, attacking his credibility with brutal efficiency. That's what they'll do, Reynolds explained. Twist facts. Attack character. You need to stay calm. Stick to evidence. When they attack, respond simply. I believed I was in an honest relationship. Evidence proved otherwise. The courthouse hearing room was smaller than I expected. Celeste sat at the plaintiff's table with 2 attorneys, projecting confidence. Judge Margaretchen reviewed the filings with evident skepticism. Reynolds presented our case first. Your Honor, this isn't a simple contract dispute. It's exposure of systematic fraud. Ms. Morgan has a pattern of targeting financially stable men, marrying quickly, positioning herself legally, then divorcing profitably. Mr. Boyd is the third known victim. Kevin Morgan took the stand. He was articulate, detailed, credible, describing identical courtship tactics, prenuptial manipulation, and financial devastation. Under cross-examination, Celeste's attorney tried discrediting him. I contacted this young man's father, Kevin corrected firmly, to prevent him from suffering what I suffered. That's not revenge. That's decency. Gallery observers took visible notice. Reynolds then played the hotel recording. The courtroom heard Celeste's voice. 18 months of charade. He actually believes I love him. Laughter. Judge Chen's expression hardened. Reynolds' financial expert, forensic accountant Thomas Brennan, testified about Celeste's divorce settlements. Based on documentation, Ms. Morgan's income from consulting work averages $40,000 annually. Yet, her lifestyle exceeds 3 times that income. The discrepancy is explained by divorce settlements totaling over $400,000 combined. Judge Chen delivered her ruling from the bench. This court finds the prenuptial agreement was procured through fraudulent misrepresentation and concealment of material facts. The contract is void. Plaintiff's claims for breach and damages are dismissed with prejudice. She paused. Furthermore, evidence suggests potential criminal fraud. The court is referring this matter to the Multnomah County District Attorney for investigation into possible charges under Oregon fraud statutes. Ms. Morgan, you should consult with a criminal defense attorney. The gavel struck. Celeste's face went ashen. Outside the courthouse, late August afternoon, reporters approached, but Reynolds deflected them. The civil case is over, I confirmed to Rufus. Criminal investigation is beginning, but for you, yes, you're free. I showed Rufus a text from Webb. Daniel Kraus just posted a public statement distancing himself from Celeste. Claims he was misled about the nature of her relationship with Rufus. Rats fleeing a sinking ship. Good, Rufus said, something like satisfaction crossing his face. Let everyone know what she is. Weeks passed. Rufus stayed in my guest room, emerging gradually from shock. Third week brought the apology. Dad, I owe you an apology, Rufus said one evening, for doubting you, for choosing her manipulation over your protection. You saw what I couldn't. I'm sorry. You trusted someone you loved, I replied. That's human nature. She exploited it professionally. You listened when it mattered. At the wedding, you gave me those 10 minutes. That took courage. How do we fix our relationship? Same way you'd fix any structure. Assess foundation. Repair cracks. Rebuild systematically. We resumed Sunday dinners. Simple routine. Gradually rebuilding connection. The 4th Sunday, he mentioned starting therapy. A counselor specializing in manipulation recovery. She's helping me identify the tactics I missed, he said. That awareness prevents repeat, I confirmed. A month later, Rufus raised finances. Wedding cost $50,000. My savings are gone. I'll loan you $50,000. 3% interest, 5-year repayment. You don't have to charge interest. This is a loan, not a gift. Loans preserve responsibility. You'll repay this because you'll take ownership of recovery. He signed the agreement carefully. Thank you for treating me like an adult who made an expensive mistake. Early September, Reynolds called with updates. The DA accepted Celeste's plea deal. 3 years probation, restitution, criminal record. She left Portland. License revoked, reputation destroyed. Based on your case, Reynolds added. The DA found 2 additional potential victims. You stopped a serial predator. Late August afternoon, Rufus and I stood on my terrace overlooking Portland. I've been thinking about trust, Rufus said. I trusted her blindly. Now I'm paranoid. Neither is healthy. Trust is important, I agreed. But verification is more important. Trust, then verify. Watch for consistency between words and actions. Celeste's words were perfect. Her actions revealed the truth. Like blueprint inspection, he said. Design can be beautiful, but you verify the calculations. Exactly. You're an architect's son after all. He smiled. His first genuine smile in months. I'm lucky. Some people don't have a father who builds cases to save them. Some do. They just need to recognize protection when it's offered. I recognize it now. We stood in comfortable silence as the sun set. Relationship healed. Justice served. Fresh start established. The architect's work was complete.